Listen, I want every word I speak to you today to be a hammer blow shattering the hard stone of the illusion in which you live. Since the beginning of time, man has looked at gold, at silver, at coins and papers, believing that power resides in them. But I tell you, power has never been in the metal nor in the paper, but in the inner state that brought them forth. Money, like everything you see, is merely the mask of an invisible substance, disciplined imagination. What you call reality is a late reflection, a shadow of what you have already chosen to be within yourselves. And yet, you continue to live as beggars of chance, supplicating luck, imploring for opportunities, as if there were invisible hands deciding your destiny. I tell you with firmness, there is no luck, there is no chance, there are no external forces governing your life. There are only states that you assume and sustain. You are not trapped in poverty because the world imposed it upon you, but because you chose, even if unconsciously, to inhabit that state. When I understood this, I treated money not as a number in an account, not as a piece of paper, but as a living presence. I made it a being with whom I conversed, and I discovered that the entire world is sensitive to this treatment. For when you see something as a person, you recognize life in it. And when you recognize life, the universe responds to you with life. Money ceased to be distant and hostile. It became near, obedient, willing to serve, like a loyal servant to its master. Therefore perceive the gravity of this truth. Everything you treat as inanimate ignores you, but everything you treat as living listens to you. Money escapes you because you see it as a shadow, as something outside of you. But when you turn inward and say, "You are welcome, you are my friend, you are a part of me," it responds to you with obedience. Life always returns to you, in reflection, the way you look at it. For this reason, I exhort you, abandon once and for all the childish belief that external signs determine your destiny. Your inner gaze is the brush that paints the scenery. Your silent dialogue is the command that shapes the invisible. Money, abundance, prosperity, all are servants of the state you sustain. If you want them in your life, begin by seeing them as already present, as companions surrounding you. For the universe does not create what has not first been assumed. It merely projects before you what you have already chosen within. And I say with a voice of authority, when you truly understand this, you will cease to ask. You will begin to command in silence, and your reality will obey like a docile slave to its master's will. Money, then, will no longer be a stranger, but your ally. The first principle I give you is to recognize that all creation begins in the invisible, and it is here that most stumble, because the eyes are accustomed to believing only in what they see. But I tell you with authority, what you see is already dead, already past. It is merely a delayed photograph of an old state that you once accepted within yourselves. The money you seek is not found in circulating coins, in safes or in banks. It is born in the inner state that you decide to inhabit and firmly sustain. As long as you continue to look outward, hoping that the external will convince you of abundance, you will never touch it, for you will be begging for reflections instead of creating the source. The invisible is the seed. The visible is merely the harvest. Understand that when we treat money as a living presence, as a faithful ally, we are already planting the reality that will inevitably manifest. If you see it as an enemy, it abandons you. If you fear it, it escapes you. If you desire it with desperation, it rejects you, for no one approaches one who treats them as a stranger or a ghost. But if you relate to it as an intimate friend, as a welcome guest, it enters your house and remains. The external world merely confirms the relationship you first established within yourselves. Take the scripture as an example. In the beginning was the Word. Before there was form, there was word, there was intention, there was state. So too with money. Before it appears in your hands, it already lives in the state you sustain. If you see yourselves as poor, even if you receive riches, they will soon slip away from you, for they found no place to dwell within you. But if you see yourselves rich in consciousness, even if your hands are empty, sooner or later external reality will adjust to reflect this silent decree. Do not be deceived by your senses. Your eyes may show you scarcity, but the invisible may already be full of abundance, awaiting only your persistence in sustaining it until the visible form bends. It is like the farmer who plants the seed, and does not dig up the earth every day to check if it has sprouted. He trusts, he waits, he knows that the invisible is working. Thus you must proceed, assuming within yourselves the reality of abundance and refusing to measure your life by what your eyes do not yet see. When I treated money as a person, I discovered this secret. The invisible is more real than the visible. For the visible is late, it is past. The invisible is source, it is origin, it is eternal present. And by addressing money as a conscious being, I was merely addressing the living reflection of the state I decided to inhabit. By saying, "You are welcome, you are my friend, you are a part of me," I decreed within myself the state of possession, and the world, like an obedient servant, adjusted to this silent command. Therefore, the first step is this: recognize that all creation begins within. Money is not external, it is an assumed state. And when you sustain that state with conviction, reality has no choice but to obey. The visible world will always be a servant of the invisible, and never the reverse. He who understands this stops chasing shadows and begins to call forth reality from within. And then, as an inevitable reflection, money, treated as a living presence, draws near, responds, and remains. The second principle is to understand that your inner dialogue is the true song that commands reality. Most speak to the external world, supplicate to men, ask circumstances, but forget that the only ear that truly decides is the ear of your own consciousness. Life does not respond to what you say aloud, but to what you silently repeat within yourselves. It is there that the command is given, it is there that the decree is recorded, and it is from there that the reality you encounter springs forth. When I treated money as a person, I began to speak to it not as a beggar pleading for aid, but as one who converses with an intimate friend who is already present. I would say, "You are welcome. Your presence brings me peace and expansion. You walk with me." And by sustaining this dialogue, I realized that something changed not externally but within. For with each word, my own mind accepted the idea of abundance, and when the mind accepts, the world cannot refuse. If you still think you speak alone when you converse with the invisible, you are blind to the law that governs all things. For it is written, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." This means that every sentence you repeat, every image you maintain, is like a seed sown in the fertile soil of the mind. It is not a matter of chance, but of inevitable harvest. You speak misery within yourselves, you will harvest misery. You speak abundance with conviction, you will harvest abundance. There is no exception. Notice how in your daily life you already practice this principle, albeit unconsciously. When you fear not having enough, your inner dialogue is, "There won't be enough, I can't do it, it never works out." These words do not fall into emptiness. They engrave themselves upon your being and give form to circumstances. But when you deliberately change the tone of this dialogue and address money as a friendly presence, the energy of your life begins to align with this certainty. Money, which before seemed to flee, begins to find ways to manifest, because it is no longer treated as a distant enemy, but as a close companion. Do not expect your world to change while your inner dialogue remains enslaved by doubt. He who plants words of scarcity and then wishes to harvest fruits of abundance is in contradiction with himself. It is like sowing thorns and awaiting roses. The dialogue you maintain in silence is the most powerful decree that exists, and your duty is to discipline it until it only repeats what you wish to see realized. Thus, I tell you, speak to money, speak to abundance, speak to prosperity, as one speaks to a real person. Tell it that it is welcome, that it is part of you, that it walks by your side. Do not do so as a plea, but as a reminder. For one who asks admits they do not have, but one who affirms declares they already possess. Life does not respond to the petitioner, it responds to the Creator. And if you want money to serve you, stop speaking as a servant of scarcity and begin to speak as a master of abundance. This is the second principle. Your inner dialogue is the code of your creation. Guard it, watch over it, shape it with firmness, because every word, even in silence, is a living decree. The third principle is to purify your view of money. Most see it as dirty, corrupting, as the root of evil, and thus unconsciously repel what they simultaneously desire. How can you attract something you simultaneously curse? It is not possible. Your world is a faithful reflection of the value you give to things within yourselves. If you see money as a curse, it will be a curse in your hands. If you see it as a danger, it will bring fear. But if you see it as a neutral instrument, as energy ready to take the form of your purpose, then it will become a multiplier of your abundance. When I treated money as a person, I saw in it not an enemy that corrupts, but a loyal servant that takes the form of the command it receives. Just as the hammer is not guilty of being used to destroy or to build, money is not guilty either. It merely amplifies the intention of the heart that possesses it. In the hands of some, it serves injustice. In the hands of others, it opens doors for good, supports families, erects works, spreads light. The error lies in blaming the instrument for the use made of it. Scripture gives the example of the bread that, upon being blessed, multiplied. The bread itself was not sacred, but the blessing transformed it into a vehicle of abundance. So too with money. It is not money that brings blessing or curse, but the gaze with which you receive it. When your gaze is one of condemnation, you push away prosperity. When your gaze is one of acceptance and purity, you attract multiplication. It is always your judgment that determines the form the energy will take. Examine then how you have spoken of money. How many times do you curse it in secret, saying, "Money changes people. Money is dangerous. Money spoils good people." These words are not harmless. They create barriers within you, preventing abundance from manifesting, because no one truly desires what they judge to be harmful. You ask for prosperity, but deep down you fear having it. It is this contradiction that keeps you in the same place. When I began to see money as a neutral and obedient presence, everything changed. I started to silently bless it in every form it appeared, a coin, a note, an opportunity. And like a faithful servant, it began to multiply. For what you bless grows, and what you curse diminishes. Money is neither God nor demon, but a reflection. It merely returns to you amplified what you project onto it. If you want true freedom, change your gaze. No longer see it as a threat, but as an ally. Do not treat it as a burden, but as a neutral resource that bends to your command. And when you do so, you will see that it will draw near naturally, without struggle, without resistance. For it will no longer be repelled by fear, but attracted by acceptance. This is the third principle. Purify your view. Abandon distorted judgment and see in money merely a servant, ready to obey your sustained imagination. He who does so ceases to fear it, and therefore receives it. The fourth principle is discipline. Many understand the law, but few practice it with constancy. They desire abundance today, and tomorrow they allow themselves to be dragged by fear, like one who plants the seed and pulls it from the earth every day to check if it is germinating. He who acts thus never harvests. Steadfastness is needed. Once you have assumed the state of abundance, you must sustain it without wavering, like the potter who maintains the vision of the form until the clay obeys. The external world will try to deceive you with appearances of scarcity, but these are merely shadows of old states that still echo. The true Creator is not deceived by what he sees, for he knows that the visible is late and already dead. Understand that every state needs time to crystallize in the physical world. The invisible works in silence, and your duty is to remain unwavering. If a farmer, upon sowing the seed, began to doubt the next day, there would be no harvest. He trusts because he knows the law of the earth. So too must you trust, for the law of the mind is even more certain than the law of the soil. Sustaining the assumption is the daily exercise that transforms imagination into flesh, thought into reality. When I treated money as a person, I did not do so merely for an instant. I held the vision firm even when my pockets were empty, and because I did not bend to appearances, they bent to me. Discipline is the seal that transforms a simple desire into a creative decree. Without discipline, your states change every instant. One moment you are rich in thought, the next poor in fear, and thus your life finds no consistency. But when you refuse to abandon the assumed state, the world sooner or later is obliged to obey. Scripture speaks of Abraham who, against all hope, believed. He did not look at Sarah's barrenness, nor at the signs of his aged body, but sustained the promise as already fulfilled. This is the model of discipline. It matters not if the world shouts the opposite. He who maintains his vision has already decreed the end, and nothing can undo what has already been assumed inwardly. Therefore, I tell you, discipline is choosing again and again the reality you want. It is resisting the temptation to measure your life by the signs of the senses. It is refusing to be a slave to doubt. He who remains firm within himself governs the world outside himself. Sustain the state of abundance not as hope but as certainty. Sustain it until it becomes a memory, until the external world, like an obedient servant, bows before the command you have already issued in the silence of your consciousness. This is the fourth principle: unwavering persistence. For life does not respond to fleeting desire, but to the assumption sustained with discipline. The fifth principle is anticipatory gratitude. Many wait to receive before giving thanks, but this is the path of those who beg, and not of those who create. True gratitude is not born when the eyes see, but when the heart already recognizes possession in the invisible. It is like a king who, upon giving an order, does not await proof that it will be fulfilled. He already rests in certainty, for he knows his word is law. Thus you must act with money and with every form of abundance. Give thanks beforehand because within you it already is. When I treated money as a person, I learned to greet its presence even before seeing it manifested. I would say in silence, "Thank you for being with me. Thank you for being a part of my life. Thank you for multiplying my freedom." And in speaking thus, I was not trying to convince myself of something distant, but merely recognizing what was already true in the invisible realm. Gratitude does not create the promise. It merely seals the certainty that the invisible has already been conceived and that the visible will obey. Scripture gives you an example when the Master, before the hungry multitude, raised the loaves and gave thanks before there was multiplication. The bread was still meager, but anticipatory gratitude revealed the abundance already present, and the meager became much. So too it is with money. If you look upon it with complaint and grumbling, it diminishes. But if you welcome it with gratitude, even a little expands. For what you bless grows and what you curse disappears. Understand, gratitude is proof of faith. He who gives thanks beforehand shows that he has already received. He who waits to receive before giving thanks reveals that he still doubts. See then how your heart behaves. If you still murmur about scarcity, you are trapped in the old state. But if you give thanks for the invisible, you already inhabit the new state. And sooner or later, the external world will have no choice but to reflect the silent decree of your inner self. Make gratitude your daily breath. Give thanks not only for large sums, but for small manifestations, for discreet signs of abundance, for the simple presence of life that sustains you. Every act of gratitude is like lighting a lamp in consciousness, and every lit lamp illuminates the path to greater revelations. Money, when treated as a person, responds to recognition. It remains where it is honored and departs from where it is despised. This is the fifth principle, anticipatory gratitude. Do not wait for the external world to change to feel gratitude. Change your state through gratitude, and the external world will obey. For he who gives thanks beforehand already possesses, and he who possesses in the invisible will never fail to harvest in the visible. Listen carefully and keep these words as a seal upon your heart. Everything I have revealed to you is not new doctrine, but an eternal law that has always operated, whether you knew it or not. Money, abundance, prosperity, all are merely reflections of the state you assume within yourselves. Beg no more for external signs. Do not bend to appearances that scream scarcity. Every visible form is a shadow, and the shadow has no power to decide your destiny. The power lies in the invisible, in the state sustained in silence and conviction. I treated money as a person, and the external world bowed. I recognized that all creation begins in the invisible. I spoke to it as to an intimate friend. I purified my gaze to see it as a neutral servant. I sustained my vision with unwavering discipline, and I gave thanks before seeing, certain that it was already mine. These 5 principles are keys that open the doors to your own inheritance. For there is no distance between you and what you desire, save the distance of your disbelief. Therefore awaken, Beg no more for change. Do not wait for men, governments, or circumstances to decide for you. Choose now the state in which you want to live. Inhabit it in your imagination. Sustain it with your words and feelings, and the world, like an obedient servant, will bow to your command. Money, treated as a living presence, will accompany you as a faithful ally. And I tell you with firmness, cease your pleas, cease your complaints. From today, command in silence with certainty and conviction, and see how reality obeys you. For you are creators, heirs of eternal abundance, and everything already belongs to you in the invisible. Live then as one who already possesses, and the world will hasten to confirm what you have already chosen to be within yourselves. Close your eyes for an instant. Imagine that everything around you, the ground you walk on, the air you breathe, the people who cross your path, is merely a reflection, an image projected from what you silently hold within yourself. Imagine that there is no chance, luck, or coincidence. Everything is law, and this law responds without fail to what you assume to be true. This is the basis of conscious creation. And that is why when someone says a phrase with true faith, the universe bows. Not because the words have power, but because the speaker becomes the power behind them. Most people live believing that money is out there, distant, hidden in some opportunity, in some job, in some stroke of luck. They don't understand that money is not something to be conquered, it is something to be reflected. The material world is merely a mirror. It shows with perfect precision what you believe yourself to be. That is why some work hard and remain poor, while others speak gently and attract wealth effortlessly. It is not work that creates abundance, it is the inner state. When I say use this phrase once, I am not talking about magic, superstition, or enchanted words. I'm talking about an inner command, a silent decision where you recognize, I am the cause, the world is the effect. In that instant, you cease being a creature asking the universe to act, and you become the creator who gives orders to reality itself. You awaken to what you have always been, the center of consciousness that molds all forms, the invisible breath that moves circumstances. The phrase is merely the key, but the key only works if turned with the right consciousness, and that consciousness is the unshakable knowledge that you lack nothing, that abundance is already yours, that money, like all expressions of energy, is attracted by the vibrant field of one who already is what they wish to be. If you say the words only with your lips, nothing will change. But if you pronounce them with an awakened heart, with the certainty of one who does not doubt, then you will see the response emerge, sometimes so naturally, so perfectly, that it will seem like coincidence. It's not coincidence, it's law. Everything you see is merely the shadow of what you have assumed to be true in the invisible, and whoever masters this truth no longer needs to chase anything, because the world chases them. First, understand the nature of the seed. Everything you affirm in the present is planted in the invisible and will take form in the visible. Creation does not respond to I want or one day I will have. It responds to I am. I am is the Creator's password. That is why Scripture reveals the name as I am, and that is why it says, tell the weak, I am strong. It is not poetry, it is spiritual technology. When you declare I am the wealth the world reflects, you are not describing your account balance. You are defining the state that will govern what the account, people, and circumstances will be obliged to reflect. The effect bows to the cause. The cause is your assumed state now. See life symbolically. The field is the world, the seed is your affirmation in the present, the soil is your imagination. You plant once and seal it. No one plants and digs up the soil every hour to see if the seed has sprouted. That kills the seed. Likewise, repeating out of desperation, checking for signs, measuring results every minute, is to unearth the creation. Plant and water with silence, gratitude, and consistent conduct. Anticipatory gratitude is water. Confident silence is light. Consistent action is warmth. Within 24 hours, the invisible finds ways to present itself. An unexpected call, an invitation, a discount, an advance payment, an old sale that unlocks, an agreement that seemed stalled and moves forward. Do not demand how, that is the field's part. Beware of subtle negations. You might say, I am prosperous, and 5 minutes later sigh, complain about the price, refuse to see an opportunity or recount a tale of bad luck. This is uprooting the seed and planting another of scarcity. The law has no humor, it merely mirrors what you uphold. That is why internal discipline is gold. When the old mind comes with, "What if it doesn't come?" respond with posture, not with words. Breathe, straighten your shoulders, see yourself as already having received, and go about your day as one who knows. A king does not explain decrees, he issues them. Practical exercise to seal the seed. Close your eyes for 60 seconds. Relax your tongue, release your abdomen, breathe through your nose. See for an instant a simple post-fact. Not fireworks, but a detail of completed reality. You saying thank you after seeing a receipt, you putting away your phone after a payment message, you calmly closing your wallet, feeling the lightness of one who has. Feel the scene, do not observe it from outside. You are within it. Then pronounce just once internally as one signing a decree, "I am the wealth the world reflects." Open your eyes and drop the subject. During the day, confirm the seed through behavior. Pay small things without fear. Organize your accounts with order and appreciation. Treat opportunities with readiness. This is not forcing manifestation. It is acting in accordance with who you already are. Remember Abraham. He called things which are not as though they were. This is how creation works. You call in the present, and the present governs the future. Plant correctly, seal with silence, water with gratitude, and walk as one who has. The rest is harvest. The second truth is to understand that imagination is not fantasy. It is the altar where creation happens. Everything that exists in the physical world was first accepted in the inner world. There are no exceptions. The common person's error is to treat imagination as child's play, while treating reality as something solid and immutable. But the initiate, the one who awakens to the law, does the opposite. They honor their imagination as the only sacred place where things truly originate. That is why Christ said, "When you pray, go into your room and shut the door." The room is the mind, and the door is the turning off of the sensory world. Inside you do not ask, you create. Imagination is the soul's studio. When you imagine something and feel it to be real, you are molding the invisible substance of life. It does not distinguish between the real and the imagined. It merely reproduces what is assumed with feeling. If you see yourself as poor, humiliated, lacking, and feel this as truth, no matter what you say afterward, that is the state the law will obey. Imagination is a faithful servant. It does not judge, does not question, it merely reflects. Therefore, the first task for anyone desiring abundance is to purify the imagination. It is to abandon scenes of lack and consciously inhabit the image of fullness. Try this now. Close your eyes and see yourself not asking but possessing. See yourself living the result, not the process. Do not see money coming, see money already arrived. See yourself breathing a sigh of relief, feeling the weight of gratitude in your chest, observing the glow of prosperity as something natural. Feel this internal reality until it completely replaces the world around you. Emotion is the seal of creation. What you feel deeply already exists in the invisible and will begin to press upon the physical world to become visible. The rational mind will say, "But it hasn't happened yet." And this is where the disciple separates from the common person. The disciple smiles and responds, "Yes, it has happened within me." They know that everything seen is born of the invisible, and that persisting in the inner vision is more powerful than chasing external appearances. Therefore, while the world rushes, they remain quiet, imagining with faith. And time, obedient, merely organizes circumstances. Imagination is not escape, it is mastery. To escape is to dream without faith. To master is to imagine with consciousness. The person who imagines with purpose does not try to manipulate others, but their own inner state. They do not say, "They should pay me." They say, "I am the one who receives." They do not say, "I hope it works out." They say, "I am the one for whom everything flows correctly." This inversion is the beginning of freedom. Thus, when you say, "I am the wealth the world reflects," Do not visualize banknotes, safes, or numbers. Visualize the feeling. See yourself as the source. See money as a reflection, not as a goal. Imagination is the mirror of eternity. It creates the invisible, and the world bows to copy it. Whoever understands this never begs again, because they perceive that imagination sustained with faith is the true treasure, and from it, all visible wealth inevitably springs. The third truth is to understand the role of time. Time is neither punishment nor obstacle. It is the means by which the invisible becomes visible. The impatient person destroys their own harvest because they do not understand that every creation needs to mature. They plant and want to reap at the same instant, but the law does not work under anxiety. It works under certainty. When you say, within 24 hours, do not impose haste, impose faith. Physical time is merely the necessary movement for the invisible to organize itself around your assumption. It is like lighting a flame in a dark room. It does not create the room, it merely reveals what was already there. Time is the ally of one who knows how to wait with consciousness. It is not the empty waiting of one who doubts, but the powerful waiting of one who has already decided. Time works for the person who trusts, because when you assume the state of wealth, the unconscious mind, which is the matrix of all reality, begins to adjust facts, people, and circumstances to reflect that. You may not see the movement, but it is in progress. It is at this point that many give up, saying nothing happened. But what they call nothing is merely the invisible stage of manifestation. Just as a grain germinates in the dark before breaking through the earth, your assumptions also need this period of silence. When you declare, I am the wealth the world reflects, the universe begins a reorganization. Ideas emerge, doors open, synchronicities appear. But to perceive them, you need inner calm. One who lives watching the clock is affirming absence. Time bows only to those who ignore it, to those who live as if they have already received. Therefore, the secret is not to make time rush, but to rest in it. Rest is the proof of faith. Observe the cycles of nature. The sun rises and sets effortlessly, the seasons change without warning, flowers open without anxiety. Everything flows in harmony because everything operates under the same law. Haste is human, creation is divine. One who aligns with the rhythm of the invisible discovers that life is never late. It merely reveals at the exact moment. When you trust, time becomes your servant. When you doubt, it becomes your prison. So, when you say the phrase, feel time as your ally, say it once and enter into rest. Do not expect something to happen. Recognize that it has already happened. The interval between the invisible and the visible is merely the space where your faith is tested. Remain firm, not because of circumstances, but because of the inner knowledge that everything is already fulfilled. You do not need to see the seed sprout to know it is alive. You do not need to see the money to know it is coming. Time is merely the path between the decree and the harvest, and one who walks with certainty has already arrived, even before seeing the destination. The fourth truth is that anticipatory gratitude is the seal of manifestation. It is proof that you have already assumed the desired state and ceased to be a supplicant, becoming a creator. When you give thanks before seeing, you are affirming that it already exists in the invisible, and that the visible is merely adjusting to reflect it. Gratitude is not a superficial emotion, nor an optimism technique. It is a silent declaration of mastery. I have already received. The ungrateful implore, the grateful command. And that is why gratitude is a portal. It instantly places you in the state of possession, and everything corresponding to that state begins to move toward you. You can say, thank you, without feeling anything, and it will have no power. But if you say it with a full heart, as one who truly recognizes the miracle fulfilled, that vibration touches the invisible and accelerates the return. Gratitude is faith in the form of feeling. And since the law does not respond to words but to states, it moves immediately in favor of one who vibrates with certainty. The person who gives thanks for what they do not yet see demonstrates that they have understood the secret. They need no proof because the feeling itself is the proof. Practice this now. Upon awakening, do not think about what is missing. Close your eyes and say silently, not as one who pleads, but as one who ascertains, thank you because everything is already resolved. Do not say it out of habit. Say it as one contemplating something achieved. Imagine yourself surrounded by signs of abundance, not empty luxury but real fullness. See life responding to you with ease. The simple act of giving thanks transforms the field. Where there is gratitude, there is no resistance. And where there is no resistance, manifestation flows. The small mind will say, "But how can I give thanks for something I don't yet have?" And it is precisely here that the dreamer separates from the creator. The dreamer needs to see to believe. The creator believes and then sees. Giving thanks beforehand is the same as sealing an invisible contract with your own consciousness. It is saying to life, "I know it has already been done." And life, faithful to the law, confirms it. Gratitude is also the purest form of faith because it eliminates fear. No one fears losing what they are fully grateful for. Fear is the absence of gratitude, and gratitude dissolves fear as the sun dissolves mist. Therefore, each time doubt tries to infiltrate, give thanks. Do not fight with doubt. It loses strength when you ignore it and turn your attention to certainty. So when you say, "I am the wealth the world reflects," close your eyes and feel gratitude rise like a gentle wave. Not for what will come, but for what already is. Say thank you, not with haste, but with reverence, as one who touches the invisible with the hands of the heart. This is the vibration that moves mountains, that opens paths, that transforms the invisible into form. Gratitude is the Creator's signature, and when it is genuine, the universe hastens to fulfill the decree. The fifth truth is silence. Silence is the seal of faith, the Creator's final act before the invisible becomes visible. After the word is spoken with conviction, the truly wise person becomes silent. They do not argue with the world, do not seek signs, do not explain what they have done. They know that creation is already complete and that, from that instant, time's role is merely to reveal what is already determined in the invisible. Silence is the rest of the spirit that knows, and knowing, in its highest sense, is feeling one with the desired outcome. Without doubt, without effort, without noise. The common person talks too much because they doubt. They repeat their prayers, watch for results, compare days, analyze signs. Each time they do this, they unconsciously affirm that it has not yet happened, and thus they interrupt the flow of creation. But one who has learned the law acts like a king, gives their order and proceeds in peace. There is no anxiety in one who has authority. There is no haste in one who already knows the order has been fulfilled. Silence is, therefore, the language of those who know power. It is in silence that energy organizes itself, that pieces move, that the invisible works in your favor. The word casts the seed, silence allows it to sprout. If you talk too much, you interrupt the process. If you become silent, the universe responds. Therefore, after declaring, "I am the wealth the world reflects," silence yourself internally and externally. Do not doubt, do not repeat, do not question. Live as one who already possesses, and the world will hasten to confirm. True silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the internal stillness that arises when the mind ceases to interfere. It is certainty without explanation, the serenity of one who needs no proof. This calm is magnetic, it attracts the fulfillment of the word. When you become silent internally, the world speaks for you. Circumstances, people, and coincidences move like invisible servants to give form to your decree. And when the mind comes with its noises, will it work out? What if it doesn't come? What if I'm mistaken? Remember, this is just the old state trying to survive. Breathe and return to center. Do not respond. Silence is your answer. Creation needs no defense. It merely needs permanence. The true master does not live explaining the law. They demonstrate it by the way they walk, speak, and look. Silence is the conscious creator's final gesture. It is in silence that faith becomes power, and power becomes fact. Therefore, after speaking once, trust. Money will come, not because you pleaded, but because you commanded. And one who knows who they are does not need to repeat the command. The universe recognizes them by the vibration of their silence. Now understand, nothing more remains to be sought outside. Everything you looked for, money, opportunities, security, recognition, has always been within you, merely waiting to be recognized. The world was never the cause of your condition, only the mirror of what you believed yourself to be. The beggar and the king live under the same sky, but what separates them is the inner state each chooses to inhabit. You were not born to implore, but to command, not to fear, but to create, not to be molded by circumstances, but to mold them by the silent power of consciousness. Use this truth with reverence. When you say, "I am the wealth the world reflects," know that you are invoking the eternal principle of creation. Say it once with faith, and look back no more. Do not seek proof, be the proof. Walk with the demeanor of one who already possesses, and see how the world reorganizes around you. People will change their attitudes, doors will open, opportunities will seem to arise from nowhere, but nothing will be chance. Everything will be a response. From now on, refuse to beg for change. No external force will decide your destiny. You are the center of creation. It is consciousness that dictates what matter must do. Speak little, imagine clearly, feel deeply, and then rest. What has been assumed with conviction cannot fail to manifest, because the law knows no exceptions. So go, not as one who waits, but as one who knows. Walk with the serenity of one who already has. Speak with the calm of one who has already seen, and give thanks with the joy of one who has already received. From this moment, command the world to align with your state, and it will, because the world is not greater than you. The world is you, revealed in form. There is something modern man has forgotten, and this forgetfulness has made him a slave to what he himself unknowingly creates. He lives asking, seeking, fearing, and fighting, as if there were a force outside him controlling the threads of destiny. But I tell you, with the same authority with which ancient mystery schools instructed their initiates, everything that happens to you is merely a reflection of what you are assuming yourself to be. There are no enemies out there. There is no luck, no misfortune, no chance. The visible world is a shadow cast by your consciousness, and the shadow, however real it may seem, is always controlled by the light that generates it. Most people live reacting to appearances, to bills, diagnoses, relationships, the news. They believe that life begins on the outside and ends within, when in fact it is the opposite. The universe is a response, not a cause. Matter obeys mind, as clay obeys the potter. But man has forgotten that he is the potter. He looks at the clay and calls what he himself has shaped destiny. The most powerful secret in the world, the secret few dare to use, is the law of assumption. It states that everything you assume to be true within yourself will inevitably become reality in the world. There are no exceptions, no limits, no delay, except that imposed by your doubt. What you feel and believe yourself to be, you are. What you doubt, you are not. It is so simple that the intellect rejects it, because the ego wants complexity, formulas, rituals, and methods. But truth needs no adornments. It is silent, absolute, present. When I say assume, I don't mean a fleeting thought, but a sustained state. To assume is to live inwardly the feeling of the fulfilled desire, until it becomes so natural that the world is compelled to mirror that conviction. It is not visualization without faith, nor repetition without emotion. It is knowing. It is walking with the serenity of one who already possesses what has not yet manifested. The ancients called this dwelling in the kingdom. Neville called it living in the end. I call you to remember yourself, the creator who exists behind the mask of personality. What seems impossible to you today is nothing more than a state you have not yet chosen to inhabit. When you change your state of consciousness, everything else will effortlessly align. This is the key that the wise hid in parables, that prophets encoded in symbols, and that common men ignored, seeking outside what was always within. And that is why I tell you, the greatest power in the world is not to change things, it is to change the state from which things emanate. When this is understood, suffering will cease to have purpose, and man will once again become master of his own reality. Look around you. Everything that surrounds you, the body you inhabit, the people you meet, the situations you face, are not causes, but effects. They are echoes of a previous vibration originating within you. Most people believe that life pushes them, that destiny shapes them, that circumstances dictate their path. But what actually happens is the opposite. The world is an obedient mirror that only reflects the inner state of the observer. Nothing happens to you without first having happened within you. This is the basis of all conscious creation and the first step to reclaiming mastery over your existence. He who understands this stops blaming, resisting, and fearing. He understands that there is no out there is only projection. Just as a film does not exist outside the light that projects it, your life does not exist outside the consciousness that sustains it. Humanity's error is trying to correct the scenes of the film without ever looking at the projector. They want to change their partner, job, body, government, but they never change the state from which all of this originated. And while they struggle with the images, they perpetuate the same plot. The inner state is the matrix of all experiences. It is an invisible field that precedes the visible world, like a drawing precedes a sculpture. If fear dwells within you, the world will show you reasons to fear. If you carry guilt, it will offer you punishment. But if you live in a state of faith, completeness, and certainty, everything around you begins to reorganize itself around that axis. The physical world is slow, but it is faithful. It follows your vibration with absolute precision, even when you doubt it. Those who are still spiritually asleep believe they need to fight to achieve what they desire, that they need to prove their worth, deserve, convince, compete. But he who awakens understands that the universe is merely an echo of what is felt and assumed in consciousness. The struggle disappears when the correct state is assumed, not because the world becomes easier, but because there is no longer resistance between what is imagined and what is experienced. External harmony is the inevitable reflection of internal harmony. When you understand that the inner state is the only cause, everything shifts within you. You cease to be a victim and become the origin. You no longer ask reality to favor you, you silently mold it. The word miracle loses its mystery because it becomes merely the name given to the perfect alignment between the invisible and the visible. And you realize, with a mixture of wonder and reverence, that you were never separate from the power that moves the heavens and the earth. Therefore, I tell you, the true work is not to transform things, but to transform your state of being. It is to turn inward and adjust the center from which everything emanates. When the state changes, the world changes. Not because the world is persuaded, but because it is a faithful reflection. This is the law, this is the order. The entire universe awaits your dominant vibration to know what to manifest. And what it will manifest will always be what you are, not what you desire. Because desire is future, but being is now. When your being aligns with what you desire, reality obeys instantly. Everything begins in the invisible. Everything begins within you. Life changes when man realizes that each state of consciousness is a garment he chooses to wear. Just as you change clothes effortlessly, you can also change the state you inhabit. But for that, you must first recognize that you are wearing one. Most people live identified with their feelings and thoughts as if they were their very identity. They say, I am anxious, I am poor, I am rejected. I am... But these are not eternal truths. They are merely mental garments, temporary states. The problem is that man forgets that he can shed them. The secret lies in understanding that everything you feel yourself to be naturally manifests. It is not what you desire that becomes real, but what you accept as true about yourself. If you believe you are worthy, everything in life will confirm your worthiness. If you see yourself as incapable, the world will become a showcase of limitations. The universe does not argue with you, it simply agrees. Consciousness is the only mold, and feeling is the material with which you shape the invisible. But there is a crucial point. You cannot put on a new state while still holding on to the old one. Many want to be prosperous, but still think and feel like the poor. They want to be loved, but continue to react like someone who has been rejected. They want freedom, but carry guilt, and so they live in contradiction, imagining a new destiny, but sustaining the same emotions that prevent it from being born. The new state is not imposed by force, it is assumed by surrender. You must abandon the old you to inhabit the new. To assume a state is not to pretend, nor to lie to oneself. To pretend is to say one thing and feel another. To assume is to feel something until the world confirms it. When someone inwardly places themselves in the state of already being, the universe silently reorganizes to correspond to that vibration. Everything around begins to cooperate with the image sustained within. Coincidences multiply, doors open, faces change expression, not because something external has been forced, but because the invisible field has been altered. Each state has its own logic, its own thoughts and corresponding circumstances. When you clothe yourself in the state of success, you naturally begin to think, act, and decide like someone successful. You no longer strive to change behaviors, they change on their own because the new state demands new actions. Similarly, when you clothe yourself in the state of failure, even your good ideas seem to die before they are born. Life does not respond to your effort, but to your identity, and that is why the true spiritual work is not to fight against symptoms, but to change the cause, to change the state. Ask yourself, what would a man who already has what I desire feel now? And then feel that as if it were real. Remain in that feeling until it becomes natural. When that happens, you will need to do nothing more. The old world will dissolve, and the new will appear without a sound, like the dawn that effortlessly follows the night. Because to change the state is to change destiny. Everything you seek already exists on another level of consciousness, simply waiting for you to clothe yourself in it. Imagination is the sanctuary of creative power. Everything that has ever existed, a house, a city, a symphony, an invention, was first born as an inner image. Before something could be seen, it had to be felt. The error of the common mind is to think that imagining is daydreaming, escaping reality. But what few understand is that imagination is not escape. It is the creative act in its purest form. The visible world is merely the hardened shell of a mental image that was once alive within someone. When you imagine something with emotion and certainty, you are not playing with thoughts, you are planting causes, and every cause seeks expression. Imagination, when fueled by feeling, is the silent generator of circumstances. It is not reasoning that creates, it is sustained vision. The rational mind observes what is, imagination decides what will be. It is in it that true authority over the world is found. The man who masters his imagination is lord of all. He who uses it without awareness is a slave to his own creations. Everything you hold firmly in your mind, feeling it as real, inevitably descends into manifestation. That is the law, and it acts whether you know it or not. When you imagine fear, you create events that confirm it. When you imagine love, you attract expressions of it. The universe does not distinguish between what is good or bad, right or wrong. It merely gives form to what is held with faith. Just as fire heats or destroys depending on who uses it, imagination builds or consumes depending on the consciousness that directs it. Ancient mystics called imagination God's workshop, and they were right, because it is in this inner space that you mold the invisible, choosing what the world will show you later. There are no limits here, only those you place upon yourself. What you dare to see within yourself is what the universe will dare to materialize outside. If you imagine small, you will live small. If you imagine grandly, destiny itself will expand to accompany you. But there is a secret few understand. Imagination only creates when accompanied by the corresponding emotion. Thinking of wealth while feeling fear is like trying to light a bonfire underwater. Feeling is the fuel of creation. Therefore, it is not enough to visualize, you must feel. Close your eyes and imagine what you desire with the same naturalness with which you relive a memory. Feel the touch, the sound, the smell, the emotion of already possessing it. Sustain this until it feels real. At that instant, the invisible begins to move. You do not need to know how it will happen. The how belongs to the wisdom that operates beyond your reason. Your part is simply to keep the image alive without doubting. Doubt is the wind that extinguishes the fire of creation. Faith is the breath that intensifies it. And when your imagination becomes more real than the external world bows before it. Thus manifests the silent power of conscious creators. They live more intensely in what they imagine than in what they see. The common man reacts to life, the awakened man projects it. And while one struggles with appearances, the other molds them as the sculptor molds clay. Because in the end, everything that exists is image, and the world is merely the mirror of what you dare to imagine and feel as true. Doubt is the invisible poison that destroys the works of the Spirit before they can blossom in the world. It is the subtle voice that says, "What if it doesn't work out?" And with that, extinguishes the light of faith that was beginning to illuminate the invisible. Many believe they have faith, but what they truly possess is fragile hope mixed with fear. True faith does not await signs. It creates them. It is the silent conviction of one who has already seen within what has not yet appeared without. Therefore, the fourth principle is this: sustain your vision firmly, because the world bows to the persistence of one who knows. When you doubt, you send contradictory signals to the universe. It is like lighting a flame and immediately extinguishing it, hoping the fire remains lit. Each time you imagine and then immediately ask yourself, "Will this work?" you are interrupting the creative process. Doubt is not innocent. It is the force that disintegrates what your imagination began to build. And that is why faith needs to be cultivated as a state, not as an effort. True faith is calm, not anxious. It is silent, not noisy. It is certainty, not expectation. The man who doubts is like one who plants a seed and, impatient, digs up the earth every day to see if it has sprouted. In his impatience, he destroys what he wished to grow. Nature teaches that there is an invisible time between planting and harvesting, a time when nothing seems to happen, but when everything is quietly organizing itself. Spiritual life follows the same rhythm. The invisible works in your favor when you trust, and stops working when you distrust. Doubt closes the channel through which the impossible becomes possible. Learn, then, to remain steadfast in the face of appearances. When everything around you screams that it's impossible, close your eyes and return to the state where it is already real. Sustain that state as if it were the only world that exists. The secret is not to force the outcome. It is to refuse to depart from the inner vision. Doubt is born from the habit of looking outward for proof, but the wise look only inward. He who remains faithful to his inner image sees the world slowly bending to his faith until the impossible becomes common. And when fear tries to make you give up, remember, it is merely the shadow of your old identity trying to survive. It has no power unless you believe in it. Remain in the assumed state even when nothing seems to change, because it is precisely in that silence that the universe moves. The invisible works when the visible is silent. Doubt will always come to try and pull you out of that state, but that is where faith shows its strength, not when everything seems possible, but when nothing appears to be. He who persists discovers that the world has no choice but to surrender, because sustained consciousness is irresistible. It bends time, dissolves obstacles, and aligns the improbable in your direction. Therefore, learn to protect your vision from doubt as you would protect a flame in a gale. Do not explain. Do not justify. Do not ask for confirmation. Just know. Because he who truly knows no longer needs to believe. He has become the living proof of what he once dared to imagine. The end is the beginning. Few understand the depth of this truth. Most men live trying to get somewhere, as if the desired state were in the future, distant, conditioned, dependent on time and effort. But time is an illusion created by the mind that has not yet awakened to the eternal now. All that is already is. All that will be already exists, simply waiting for someone to assume it. Therefore, he who wishes to manifest something needs to learn to live as if it already were. This is the supreme mystery of conscious creation, to feel the fulfilled end until the universe bows to inner certainty. The rational mind rejects this idea because it has been trained to react to appearances and believe in the visible. It wants to see first, then believe. But the divine law operates in reverse. First you believe, and then you see. What you feel now is what sets the stage for your tomorrow. There is no future separate from your present state. The future is merely the ripened present. When you act and think from the desired end, you place yourself in the vibration of what you want, and that vibration begins to reorganize the world around you. Living as if it already were is not pretending or escaping reality. It is creating a new reality from the inside out. It is to keep your mind and heart anchored in the feeling of inner possession. When you do this, the universe understands that that experience is already yours. It does not question, does not delay, does not evaluate if you deserve it. It simply responds to the dominant vibration of your being. And the most extraordinary thing is that when you remain in that state, you begin to act naturally as someone who has already achieved what they desire. Your voice changes, your gaze changes, your decisions change. Everything within you aligns with the new identity. Those who are spiritually asleep believe they first need to change the world to then feel peace. Those who awaken understand that it is by feeling peace that the world changes. The end is the beginning, because the feeling of the end creates the path that makes it inevitable. The road does not appear before faith, it appears because of it. When the inner state is complete, the outer precipitates, like iron drawn by an invisible magnet. And here is the most subtle point. The end must be lived in silence. He who truly knows does not speak. He who trusts does not rush. Power acts in stillness, because conviction needs no witnesses. When you close your eyes and inhabit the state of already being, you are touching the same power that moves planets, raises mountains, and dissolves seas, and that power does not fail. Everything you desire already exists now, in potential, awaiting your acceptance. When you place yourself at the end and refuse to depart from it, time bends to serve you. Opportunities arise, people appear, coincidences align. It is not luck, it is law. And the visible world, which seemed distant and resistant, reveals itself as malleable as clay before your certainty. Therefore, abandon the struggle and enter the state of the fulfilled end. See yourself already living what you desire and feel the gratitude of one who has arrived. Do not await signs. Be the sign. Because the true creator does not seek the result, he embodies it. And when the end becomes your starting point, the miracle ceases to be a miracle and becomes merely the natural order of things. We have reached the point where truth reveals itself with absolute simplicity. There is nothing outside you that can save you, punish you, or reward you. All reality is merely the mirror of the state you choose to inhabit. Therefore, the final principle is a call to silent action. Stop begging for external changes and begin to command, with inner authority, that life obey the state you have assumed. The universe does not respond to pleas, it responds to the vibration of being. He who asks demonstrates absence. He who commands demonstrates possession. And what the universe recognizes is always possession. The man who understands this law ceases to be a servant of circumstances. He no longer prays by asking, but by affirming. He no longer seeks, but accepts. He no longer laments, but creates. Power lies in the recognition that there is no distance between what you desire and what you are. The request and the answer are one single movement. The act of assuming is the very act of receiving. But few dare to live with such consciousness because the fear of their own greatness still makes them believe in external forces, in merits, in punishments. All of this is illusion. The only throne of power is within. When you truly understand that the world is a reflection, you discover that any attempt to change the exterior without altering the interior is a waste of energy. True prayer is the silence of certainty. It is to look at a situation and instead of reacting with despair, to affirm within yourself, this too shall bend. Because everything that has been created can be recreated. No form is fixed, no problem is permanent, no obstacle is absolute. Everything obeys the consciousness that sustains it, and the secret is this: speak little and feel much. A word when born from a weak state is noise, but when it comes from certainty it is decree. When you command with true feeling, you are not imposing something on the world, you are reminding the universe who you are. Power does not come from force, it comes from clarity. It is not the intensity of the shout that moves mountains, but the purity of the consciousness that emits it. The conscious creator does not struggle, does not insist, does not despair. He decides and rests. He feels what he wants to be and remains in that feeling until the world reorganizes itself around him. And the world always reorganizes itself. The house, the job, love, health, all are reflected images of an inner state. When the state changes, everything changes. Therefore, from now on, silence the voice of spiritual beggary and awaken the command of your divine nature. No longer say, I want, but I am. Do not ask, declare. Do not wait, assume. Every breath you take is a vibrational command emitted to the universe, and the entire creation awaits your instructions. He who understands this ceases to fear, because he knows that nothing happens to him. Everything obeys him. Time, chance, and destiny become servants of awakened consciousness, and it is at that instant that man returns to his true place, that of creator. Silence becomes the prayer, feeling becomes the altar, and life, the faithful mirror of what he has chosen to be. So remember, power is not in the shout, but in certainty. It is not in waiting, but in assumption. Live now as one who already is, and the universe will confirm your word, because the world is merely the echo of what you dare to declare in silence.